If you're new to this channel, my name is Chris, and on this channel we discuss emergency preparedness, aka prepping. Now, I'm releasing this video on September the 1st, which is the beginning of National Preparedness Month here in the United States. And I like to do these videos each September to both serve as a primer for anyone wanting to get serious about preparedness, plus if you've been preparing for any length of time, it's going to serve as an excellent opportunity for you to review your gear. Now, if you have the items that we're going to cover in this video, you'll be fine in the first 72 hours after a major disaster. And why 72 hours? Well, after most disasters, outside help typically comes within the first 3 days. But until then, you may very well be on your own. You can think about these items as a simple insurance policy. You can buy them, put them in a tote, and store them away in case you may need them. And many of these items you probably already have. I would encourage you to also stick around until the end, as we're going to do a giveaway for this video to help you get started, and we'll share how you can sign up for that. Water containers. Now, I intentionally start with water because you're not going to last long without it. The average person needs roughly about a gallon of water per person per day, and you're only going to survive on average for about 3 days without water. So for each person, at a minimum, you're going to want 3 gallons of water stored. So let's say you have a family of 5. You're going to want 15 gallons of water. Also, make sure you're considering your pets. Now, you're going to use this water for both drinking and sanitation. Now, when I first got serious about preparedness, I got this 5 and 7 gallon water container here on my side. They're relatively affordable and they don't take up a lot of space. And if you're in an emergency where you have to leave your home, they're transportable if you have to take them with you. Now, when shopping for these, there's a couple of things that you want to pay attention to. First of all, don't get clear water containers. If you're going to use these for long-term water stores, these can develop growth over time, especially if light gets to them. The second thing is you're going to want a container that's food-grade quality and dark like these that you see on my side. The dark material really helps to prevent growth as the light can't easily get in. Now, on the bottom of each of these, you're going to see HDPE2, which is commonly used for long-term food and water storage. The third thing is to consider the thickness. This one holds more water, but the material is very thin and it can't stack on top of each other. Now, this one, on the other hand, is a thicker material and you can actually stack these. So based on the amount of space that you have in your home, you have to really weigh the pros and cons of which one makes the most sense. And I have a mixture of both of these around the house. We'll also talk about purification and filtration later in the video. Remember, if you find yourself having to get water from nature, try to find water that is moving versus stagnant. Also, to ensure that water is safe to drink, you want to boil it at least for 1 minute at a rolling boil. Food. For this, you want at least a several day supply of non-perishable food. That doesn't require any refrigeration for each person. Now, I advise people on a few things. The first thing is to get items that don't require much in the way of cooking or cleaning. A fuel source may not be available to cook, and also you don't want to deal with cleaning up because that may be difficult after a disaster. The second thing is you want to buy items that can be stored for years. Again, we're taking the approach of kind of buying and forgetting. We're using these as, again, kind of an insurance policy. And you want to base how much food on the number of people for 3 days. So for example, the average male adult consumes about 2,200 calories per day. So here are some of the items that can meet that criteria. Now, the first thing is some type of survival bar. These are high in calories and they basically are honey wafers. And so this particular bar right here has 3,600 calories. So that's a good brick of food that can, provide. I mean, again, it's not a whole nutrition or anything like that, but at least it's an option. The next item is canned food. You probably already have some of these in your house. Just be sure to rotate them. And please, whatever you do, make sure that you actually buy canned food that you'd actually want to eat. Don't get items that you're like, well, I'm not going to eat it, but it's good there, for a survival situation. That's why you're not going to see cream of corn in my shelves. There's a reason for that. All right, the next item is MREs. You're probably familiar with these. If you haven't heard of them before, they're called meals ready to eat. These are used in the military. They're self-contained. They usually are very high, have a high caloric content. They have some type of heater that's built in to heat up the food. They're on the pricey side, but it's a good option. And again, this is not something you'll probably want to buy in bulk, but it is an option nonetheless. Now, the next item is freeze-dried food. This does require heating up water. But the good news is that these, if properly stored, can last for up to 25 years. And everything that we just went over, I do have a mixture of these in my home. And if you're just starting out, get something like, these types of canned food. They're not that expensive. You can usually find them on sale. But again, start out with things that are practical, and then you can work up over time to some of these items that we just covered. And again, I'll put links to everything down below. Obviously, you also have food in your pantry that you probably rotate, so use that as well. And regarding refrigerated food, if the power goes out, you're probably going to want to start eating that as quickly as possible if you don't have a backup power source and you have no idea when the power is going to come back, because those are the items that are going to go out first. They're going to, depending on the temperature outside, those are the ones that are going to go bad first. Now, regarding power, backup power, we'll talk about that more in just a moment. Radio. Now for the radio, we want a NOAA radio, NOAA weather radio. These can pick up the typical AM and FM bands, but they can also pick up the NOAA weather network, which broadcasts emergency information. So if a disaster were to hit your area, you're going to want to be able to tune in to a channel to get information in real time, and these devices can do this. And I don't often recommend tools that serve multiple purposes, but for this one, I do make an exception. These often will have a built-in flashlight. As you can see on the front, we've got a hand crank so I can actually power the battery. Plus there's a USB plug-in on the back of these. So if I were to crank this and plug in my USB to my phone, I can actually charge my phone. It's going to take a while, but it eventually will get the job done. Power. When it comes to powering your home and essential devices, you have two primary options. Now, most of us are probably familiar with a gas, a propane, a diesel generator. The other option that is increasingly becoming popular is what is referred to as solar generators. These are the options here in front of me that are just kind of typical solar generators that I review on the channel. I recently did a video on the channel addressing this question. Should you go with a solar or gas generator? The answer is ideally both. One of the features about these EcoFlow models here in front of me that I like is that they account for this scenario by building smart dual fuel generators that can talk with the solar generators to power them if the battery reserve gets too low. If the grid were to go down, I could deploy solar panels. I could connect them to these solar generators. Now at night, if you can reduce your power consumption, these can probably power the basics until the sun comes up. And then you can charge them up with batteries via solar panels. Again, you've got these internal combustion engine generators, as you see over here, as an option as well, which can start up on their own and power the batteries in these units. These units can actually output 240 volts on their own without having to be tied into another unit. You can plug these models directly into a transfer switch or the EcoFlow Smart Home panel, which provides many features such as power arbitrage. In 2 weeks, I'm going to do a video comparing the various solar whole home backup power options that you can easily set up to power your home if the grid goes down. And at a minimum, you're going to need an electrician to set up a transfer switch. But in the meantime, if you want to check out these two units in more detail, I've done videos on both of them, and I'll post links in the description and comments section below. Shelter and warmth. For this particular item, what we'll talk about are a few different options that I have here in front of me. The first is something like an emergency blanket. You see these all the time. After a disaster, first responders will put these over people. These are just better than nothing, I'll put it that way. So this is not something I necessarily rely upon, but it's not a bad idea to have these, and you can buy these in bulk for pretty cheap. The next item is a sleeping bag. Both in an emergency situation, for example, in the wintertime, if the power were to go out and you're in your house, this would be practical, as well as if you had to leave your home, you could take these with you to stay warm. Now, another option, and I highly consider it when we talk about shelter, some type of just basic pop-up tent. And I bought this one, years ago when I first started camping with my sons when they were little. But again, if there was a disaster, even if we were inside and having to stay inside and create a microclimate, you can do this within your home in a sealed off room. Getting into a tent with some sleeping bags at least adds one layer of shelter, even in your home. As many unfortunately learned during the Texas snowmageddon of 2021, when the grid goes down in the middle of a deep freeze, you've got problems. So maintaining body heat, it's critical, especially in cold weather. So you need to include emergency blankets, sleeping bags, and a portable tent in your kit. And these items, they can make a big difference if you're forced to evacuate or if your home loses heat. And again, we've done several videos on this channel covering preparing for winter, and I'll provide a link to one down below if you want to check that out. Flashlight. Now, one of the previous items that we covered, the hand crank radio, it does have a flashlight, but I wouldn't rely on that as my sole light source. Think of that as a backup option. Now, also don't assume that your cell phone's light will be enough. I would encourage you to get a dedicated flashlight to have on hand. And you could pick up flashlights for fairly cheap at places like Costco. I think I bought a pack of these Duracell flashlights for a pretty affordable price. We use these for our family, our kids when we go out to different events. Also, you might want to consider something like a kind of a lantern versus just a traditional point flashlight, because when you are in your home and you've got obviously the power's out, having this would be pretty nice to be able to light up a large area. Also, one of the things I find the most useful is some kind of a headlamp. Just being able to walk around and freeing up my hands to stick this on my head, it does make a big difference. One of the things I encourage you is, if you store these flashlights away, make sure that you store the batteries separately. Why? Well, how many times have you ever opened up an electronic device and you're like, oops, I accidentally left the batteries in there from years ago, and they corrode and destroy the device? And this is why in our home we use one of these battery daddies. And the advantage of this is that we go through the batteries and then we rotate and replenish them. So they're already kind of an organic part of what we do in our home already. So by the time we have a situation where a disaster may strike, if we pull these out, they're just part of the rotation of our daily use. And so the batteries are fresh and we know we're rotating these in. A lot of these batteries, they can last, if you look at some of these, for like 10 years if you properly store them. So you might want to consider going ahead and kind of front loading something like this to just keep this on hand anyway. First aid kit. If you're starting out, go with a simple kit. Again, if you're just starting out, I wouldn't try to get something advanced unless you have training or you understand how to use them. But these are good for treating your minor issues, things like cuts, burns, various pain issues. And there are more advanced options. Here on the channel, we've covered a lot of different ones over the years. Refuge Medical, I'll provide a link to their website. They have great kits that they build out. What they do is they typically buy in bulk, and then they get really high-end quality gear, and then they just wrap them up in different kits. I've also worked with Doom and Bloom, their YouTube channel. They're physicians that build out medical kits specifically for the emergency preparedness community. But if you're new, start with the basics. Tourniquet. So why a tourniquet? If you're in a situation where there's been a major disaster, the emergency responders, they're going to be strapped and they're not going to be making visits to your home. They're going to be setting up triage areas where people can come to them, usually at places like schools or hospitals. So if someone in your home has a major laceration and something like a critical artery has been severed, they can bleed out quickly. It's in these moments that seconds count. So basic first aid kits likely will not have these. The ones that I just covered a second ago, the kind you pick up, that are pre-made kits, they rarely have tourniquets. So I would definitely recommend spending the extra money to add this to your list. Now, let me point out that they sell a lot of these on Amazon. You'll see so many tourniquets, but there's one company, and I'm not associated with them, but they're the North American Rescue. They're the most reputable brand that I would encourage you to go and if you're looking for a good quality tourniquet. They're about, at the time of recording this video, about $30 to $32, but I would encourage you to at least put one of those in your kit. And again, don't get the knockoff tourniquets on Amazon. There's a lot of videos that people crank those down and they just break. Community. The best community that you can possibly build is with your neighbors, your local friends, maybe you're part of a church or something in your area. Those are the people that you want to have in your life if there's a disaster. And that's why one of the things we encourage on this channel is to build with community as much as possible. The other option is an online community. And at the beginning of the video, I did mention that we're reopening our city prepping community starting next week. And if you'd like to check it out, again, you can go to cityprepping.com/join. And what we've done is we've built an online community with dedicated content to really help prepare you better for disasters. Whistle. Well, the obvious use for these in an emergency situation is a signal for help. These can be very cheap or it can cost a few bucks more, but I would encourage you to at least have something like this in your tote or some type of emergency kit you have in your home. N95 mask. I know some of us may still be traumatized from having to wear these a few years ago, but in an emergency situation, these are very useful to help filter out contaminated air. Where I live, we have a lot of wildfires are very common, and so it's just practical to have these on hand to filter out the unhealthy particulates that get in the air. Additionally, if we see another major pandemic in our lifetime, do you remember how fast these all went at the beginning? They had to go to first responders and those that were in the medical services. So it's not a bad idea during these times like this to pick them up. Bic lighter. Having the ability to start a fire can really be important for so many reasons. I've had people point out in the comments section that as smokers, they only trust a Bic lighter. I'm not affiliated with the company Bic, but I'll take advice from people who use these on a regular basis. Now, I've got this in a little container that I can put over the cover to prevent it from accidentally sparking off. But again, having this in a kit could be very useful. Plastic sheeting and duct tape. The practical purpose for some type of plastic sheeting is to provide you with shelter or cover. They're in this application designed to protect you if you have to shelter in place. Also, when it comes to duct tape, think about scenarios where your windows may get busted and you have to put plastic sheeting over that and then have to tape it up to keep the elements out. Also, if a storm is approaching, you may want to create an X on the window with duct tape to keep the window from potentially shattering more if it were to be broken. What would happen if you had a leaky roof, or you have to get up and cover that up? Or maybe there's a severe pandemic forcing you inside and you want to be able to keep whatever's happening outside. This could be used as an option. And on the extreme side of things, and I hate to bring this up, but a possible situation is nuclear fallout. Being able to seal off the windows and other parts of your house would be critical. Personal sanitation. In all of our bags that we have for our family, we keep these little personal sanitation bags. We've got moist towelettes, we've got toothpaste, we've got toothbrushes, chapstick, toothpaste, hand sanitizer. They're little, what are these little sheets that you pull out and you rub them wet and they'll sanitize your hands. And then, excuse me, we have a toothbrush in here. And so we just keep these in all of our kits for family members. Again, if we have to leave the house, we have those options on us. Also, we keep large amounts of garbage bags throughout the house. We rotate them, but again, we keep this as it can be used for so many things. You might want to check out the video that we did on building your own toilet. If there was a disaster and the sewage for whatever reason was non-functional, you'd want to have some type of option with a bucket to take care of business. In personal hygiene, it's often overlooked in these situations, but it's very important. You really want to pack essential items, again, like I have here in this kit, because these are going to be things that you're just going to want depending on your particular situation. Again, if you have to flee your home. And also for the ladies, you're going to want feminine hygiene products. And if you have a baby in your family, make sure that you have supplies ready to go. Wrench or pliers. When it comes to disasters, having a simple tool like this would be critical to turn off various utilities. For example, if your gas line were to rupture or a water line, being able to turn those off would be important. Make sure you know where to turn them off. Remember the principle, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So if I'm trying to tighten something, I go righty clockwise to tight, righty-tighty. And if I want to loose, lefty. I'm going to my right and my left. Remember, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Super easy. And also remember, for your gas pipeline on the side of your house, whenever the valve is open for the gas line, you're going to see it. So let's pretend like this is a line. We're going to see our valve. It's going to be in line. But if we want to close it off, you're going to turn it so that it cuts across and forms essentially an X. That's when you know you're cutting off your gas meter or water line or whatever it is. So again, just look for that whenever you're going to tighten these or loosen them. Manual can opener. Sometimes it's the little things that we often overlook. And I believe point number 2, we talked about food. And one of the things that we talked about is canned food. Imagine having canned food but not having a can opener. So most will probably already have this, but it's good to keep at least a spare one on standby, especially if you're putting all these items in some kind of a storage tote. You might want to throw one of these in as well. Local map and compass. For many of us, if we're being honest, we're probably hooked on our GPS. There's times where I'll go places and I look up and I have no idea how I got there. I just follow the GPS. But if there was an incident where maybe networks were down or GPS was not available for whatever reason, you would need to be able to navigate around in your area. My encouragement is to pick up a local map at your local AAA. Now, if you go online, you'll often see state maps, and it's very rare that I've seen actual city maps online unless they're large cities. But again, I went down to my local AAA when I was able to pick this up. And again, with the compass, we want to be able to navigate. Again, a lot of us assume that we know where we are, but just having one of these on standby to combine with our map would be critical. Water filter. For water filters, these are one of those items that you probably don't think about in an emergency situation, but having the ability, depending on whatever water that you're able to get, especially if it's in the wild, to be able to filter it out would be important. This is a live straw. You put this end in the water that you need to filter, and then on this end you pull the cap off and you actually suck through it to pull the water through, and it filters it. There's other options like the Sawyer here, the Sawyer Mini. I like these. These are popular in the backpacking community. You can put these in line with like a camel pack. And again, these allow you to, I believe, filter up to 100,000 gallons of water as long as you don't have a lot of sediment in the water. The live straw, I think, is designed a little more to just, you can pretty much put it in whatever and pull it out, suck it through. And then the other thing that you're going to want to have probably is water purification tablets. These will remove parasites and bacteria, and they do not remove viruses. So having a purification tablet would be essential. I used to backpack a lot in Colorado when I was growing up, and unfortunately I caught Giardia because I did not properly filter my water, and that's something you do not want to get. So the point is, make sure that you have some type of option to be able to filter out any type of questionable water if that's what you're reduced to. Cash and important documents. After an emergency, ATMs and banks, they may not be accessible. So keeping a small amount of cash in your kit along with some copies of important documents like your IDs, documents like your insurance papers, bank account information, whatever you feel is important, you might want to consider putting this in a document folder that where everything's organized. Then you're going to want to put that in a secure location, something like a fireproof vault. Obviously, make sure that, again, that you secure this, especially depending on the sensitivity of the information that you store in there. So the key is that you want to make sure that if you have to run out your door in an emergency for whatever reason, you know where you put these. If you've got documents scattered all around the house, and I think we've done that here lately. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I'm gonna have to go after this video and do some cleaning in our house because our kids just started school, so we had to pull documents all over the place. But we try to keep them organized as much as possible. If you've ever been in a stressful situation trying to find things when you have to get out the door in a few minutes, yeah, that's good luck with that. So make sure that you keep it all in one place. And make sure also when it comes to cash, keep small bills. If you have things, don't carry a bunch of hundreds, because if you're in a situation where you may have to buy something and the cashier's like, I don't have change, or I can't open for whatever reason, if you have 50s, 20s, 10s, 5s, 1s, you're going to be able to a lot more easily buy that item and get it close enough to the number versus, hoping that somebody will have some change. Local and family emergency contact information. Finally, make sure that you have a list of local emergency numbers and family contact information printed out on pieces of paper. In all of our bug out bags, I've got pictures of my kids, I've got pictures of myself, we have pictures of every family member that we've printed all these pieces of papers. And on the papers as well, we have phone numbers that we all are to call, each other's phone numbers. There's something that you need to consider. If your area has been impacted by disaster, the phone services there may not be operational. But if somehow or another you can find a way to make a call, you're probably going to want to call out of your area, because trying to call someone inside the area may or may not work. But if you can find someone in an area far removed from yours that has not been impacted, they're going to receive the call, or are going to be able to. So for example, my family's in Texas, so I have a designated family member there that kind of serves as an operator. We all know to call them. So maybe I'm able to make a phone call for whatever reason, but I have no idea, if my wife can, or I can't reach her, well, I call there. And if she can finally get to make a call outside, she can call that same number, and hopefully my family on the other end can help coordinate where we are and find a way to get us connected. So that's just a thought. Books. When it comes to emergency preparedness, there's a lot of books on the market that you may want to have in your house to understand how to deal with certain situations, especially if the internet's not available. There's one book that I always recommend within the preparedness community that people get when they're starting out, and that's the Medical Survival Handbook. This is, again, I'm not a physician, but the reason I bring this up is because if there was a disaster and one of my family members was injured, and for whatever reason we can't get a hold of medical services or get to a hospital in time, I'd want to at least have a good, solid, basic understanding of what we need to do. Now, I know the authors of this book, and they've done a phenomenal job of boiling down medical information to a very basic, kind of easy approach for the layman, for people like you and I that may or may, well, depending if you're a physician or not, but for those of us that are not, physicians, it's put in terms that you and I can understand. The other book that you might want to consider is the SAS Survival Handbook. This is really popular within the preparedness community. This one I would say kind of gets a little more into like bushcraft, so may or may not consider that one, but there's a lot of concepts, and I think they have a new updated one for urban survival, and again, they actually do. I've got it here on the shelf behind me, but it just might give you some ideas of like how to survive if there's a prolonged grid down situation depending on your particular environment. Multi-tool. A good multi-tool can replace a whole toolbox in an emergency. So whether you need to make a cut, you need to open something or fix something, a quality multi-tool will come in handy. You want to look for one that has a variety of functions like a knife, plier, screwdriver, and a can opener. So this is one that I've had for years. I like Leatherman. When I was growing up in Boy Scouts, we always had Swiss Army knives, but I'll be honest, Leatherman's kind of won me over. I like their functionality. I'm not affiliated with them, but it's just a good all-around tool that I keep in all of our bug out bags. Giveaway. For the giveaway, all you have to do is comment on the video, give it a thumbs up, and just go to cityprepping.com/giveaway. And you can enroll for this week's giveaway there. And what we do is we'll use a tool to randomly select a winner next week, and we'll announce it on our news segment next week. What we'll do for this giveaway is the Survival Medicine Handbook. And again, this is by the YouTube channel Doom and Bloom. I love this book. I think it's phenomenal. And so we'd love to give away one for a lucky subscriber or person that enrolls. So if you want to go beyond just the 3 days of being prepared, which we covered in this video, I'm going to post a link here on the side of the screen entitled 3 months is all you need as a prepper. It does a great job of breaking down the basics of building your level of preparedness to more than the minimum. As always, stay safe out there.